So Temi Fagbenle is no longer a member of the Indiana Fever, perhaps the most surprising move of the WNBA expansion draft. Maybe just because the Fever are the most high-profile team in the league, but also because Fagbenle did have a connection with Caitlin Clark in Clark's rookie season. And the two players who drew the most headlines have a connection to Caitlin Clark. Obviously, Kate Martin of the Las Vegas Aces being selected by the Valkyries, and now Fagbenle going to Golden State as well. Fagbenle brought a great attitude to the Fever. She always tried to lead by example through enthusiasm, ran the floor well, but she did suffer some injuries as well as the season went along. She's also set to be a restricted free agent. We don't know the moves that the Fever plan to make or who they protected, but it even caught Rebecca Lobo by surprise on the broadcast that Fagbenle was not amongst those who Indiana decided to make sure they kept on the roster. And I'm sure Fever fans are going to be missing Temi Fagbenle. I mean, at the beginning of the year, I thought of her as an indispensable member of the team because of that connection with Caitlin Clark and because that position was lacking. I mean, I think when you look at Indiana, there's just a few players that you say are definitely their core players. I mean, it's Clark, it's Mitchell, it's Boston, and it's Hull. Who else they protected? That is now a mystery. Was Nalissa Smith amongst the protected players? Who else on the roster, did they make sure that they didn't allow to be poached by Golden State? That is going to be an open question as people look. I mean, they did have some young players on the team. You don't know how the new executives come in and see it and think, did they like Grace Berger, for instance? Do they think they can get more out of Katie Lou Samuelson, that it was just a down year? Dantas, there are various players on the roster who I guess you could make a case for the team protecting. And I'm not going to lose my mind over Fagbenle because that was the position I wasn't sure who was going to play well in a given night. And, Fagbenle could be the type of player who really helps out a team like Golden State that's just trying to get going. But the Fever did post, a goodbye message to Temi Fagbenle. Thank you. And I'm sure that's going to hit a lot of Fever fans in the fields, just seeing that image right there. And then, of course, some of the stuff that Fagbenle said. I mentioned how she was a leader out on the floor and how she always had a good attitude. I mean, this is one of the comments she made about Caitlin Clark early in the year.
And I'm always sprinting on the floor, and she's a great passer. So she's always going to pass it if I'm open. I know that. It's really amazing because we haven't had many practices together, but the connection is just there. I feel like I know, I'm getting a better sense of what she's about and what she's going to do. And so I just try and get into the right positions and try and make something.
Yeah. Does she yell your name, or do you just know it's coming?
I just know it's coming. She's one of them. I've only had a few of those kind of point guards who you just know sees the play before it's happened. So I'm going, I know I'm open. I'm like, oh, nah, she's regular point guards. I'm like, they didn't see it. But Caitlin saw that, she saw that before I was open, and then I'm surprised. I'm like, damn, I'm sorry I missed it. Like, okay, I got you. I know what you're about. Yeah, it's nice. Yeah. Thank you.
And speaking of that connection, I mean, there were plays that showed that off throughout the course of the season. Here is just one of them from early in the year that, goes to show just that they could work really well together and did work really well together at times. Caitlin, there's Fagbenle running. Nice bounce pass. And the finish might have traveled there. But regardless, Temi Fagbenle did suffer some injuries. She was out for an extended period of time. After those injuries, she didn't really finish nearly as well. Blew a lot of bunnies after that as the season went along. So there, you can't sit here and say it's going to be a devastating blow to the Indiana Fever, but I think it was a bit of a surprise because she would probably be one of the players that fans would have suspected to be protected. She's just such a likable player. As far as the other selections, I mentioned Kate Martin makes sense from a money standpoint, merchandise standpoint. They're going to sell a lot of Kate Martin, Valkyries jerseys, Money Martin, the two players that are most known have that connection to Caitlin Clark. There's some other names in there. Julie Van Loo of the Washington Mystics played really well internationally, and is the kind of player who maybe in a bigger role can show something. Veronica Burton from the Connecticut Sun is another player that can shoot the ball a little bit. But these are not, look, when you could protect 6 players, it's not going to be an all-star team. They took a lot of international players, which I think 7, which goes to show that they scouted this and they're looking for upside, which one would do. And they got a lot of height and length on the roster as well. And you obviously have a coach there who also coached on the Aces and has a connection with Kate Martin. Natalie Nakasi, the coach of the Valkyries, was an assistant on the Aces. So these are all the various things that come into play in a big-time expansion draft like this. Other things to note, they can waive any of the players that they picked without it being a significant hit or a hit to their salary cap at all. There's also WNBA free agency coming up, and that is an attractive destination. They didn't pick somebody from the Seattle Storm, so there's another roster spot possibly. So maybe they're looking at free agency to make a big splashy move, because if you're a free agent and you see this, that could be your team, right? The Valkyries could be your team in the Bay Area where Steph plays, and Draymond Green was rocking the Valkyries jersey on the Warriors sideline. Obviously, they also have the 5th pick in the upcoming WNBA draft. So one of their key players they would hope to select with that pick coming up. So lots still to unfold. We still have a long WNBA offseason to go, but this was a bit of a break in the drought and some excitement. And when you're hearing these names listed, I'm sure a lot of people are like, who on some of these? And I think that the Skies player not actively on their roster, right? So these are various variables that come into play. But the 2 names that probably drew the most attention were Kate Martin, which was reported before it even took place, a bit of a spoiler there. And then, of course, Temi Fagbenle. So I feel, along with the Fever fans, I will miss Temi Fagbenle. She just had a great spirit about her. Just the kind of player that's easy to root for, and you're happy to see on the team that you are rooting for. And I'm sure the Fever fans will be rooting Temi Fagbenle on from afar if she does wind up taking the floor for the Golden State Valkyries on opening night. But you can only protect so many players. And it'll be fascinating to see if some of this gets revealed over time. If we find out when the front office is asked some questions.